My parents left my 8-year-old son crying at a church entrance because I wouldn't give my brother $30,000. I'm Grace Mitchell, and what happened 3 months ago changed everything. My parents, who always preached about family values and loyalty, abandoned their own grandson like he was nothing more than a bargaining chip. They called it teaching me my place in the family hierarchy. But when we stood in that courtroom with dozens of witnesses watching their facade crumble, even they couldn't have imagined how their cruel lesson would backfire. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Your support means everything as I share what no mother should ever have to endure. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes protecting your child means standing up to the very people who raised you. Growing up in the Mitchell household meant understanding one fundamental rule: Marcus could do no wrong, and I could never do enough right. My brother Marcus was 38, 3 years older than me, and still living off our parents' generosity. He'd been the golden child since birth, the son who would carry on the family name, the business genius who just needed one more chance to make it big. 3 failed businesses later, each funded by mom and dad's retirement savings, and he was still their shining star. Me? I was the family disappointment. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I'd done something unforgivable in their eyes. I'd gotten divorced. Never mind that my ex-husband had been caught cheating with his secretary. Never mind that I'd raised Ethan alone for 5 years while working 12-hour shifts as an emergency room nurse. Never mind that I'd never asked them for a single penny since I turned 18. Grace just doesn't understand family loyalty, my mother would tell anyone who'd listen at church. Not like Marcus. He stays close to home. Staying close to home, in Marcus's case, meant living in the basement apartment of their house rent-free, eating their food, using their car, and having mom do his laundry at 38 years old. But somehow, I was the failure, because I'd chosen to protect my son from a toxic marriage and build a life on my own terms. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Marcus could do no wrong despite never doing anything right, I could never do right despite doing everything on my own. Every family dinner ended the same way, with them asking what I could do for Marcus, never what they could do for their grandson. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Last Christmas, Marcus received a new laptop for his next venture, while Ethan got a $20 gift card. When Marcus wrecked his third car in 2 years, Dad bought him another one the next day. When my car broke down and I had to take 3 buses to get Ethan to school, they told me it would build character. Marcus had never held a job for more than 6 months, but our parents called him an entrepreneur. I'd been promoted to charge nurse, managing a team of 12 in one of the busiest ERs in the state, but they introduced me as Grace, she's divorced. The pattern was exhausting. Every family milestone became about Marcus. My nursing school graduation? They left early because Marcus had a business meeting, which turned out to be drinks with his buddies. Ethan's first piano recital? They didn't show because Marcus needed help moving furniture he'd bought for another failed venture. But they'd call me when they needed something. When Mom needed someone to drive her to her doctor's appointments because Marcus was too busy. When Dad needed help with his computer because Marcus wasn't good with technology. When they needed someone responsible, suddenly I existed. Ethan noticed it too. "Why does Uncle Marcus get presents when he visits, but we have to bring food when we come?" he'd asked me once. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that some families measure love in double standards? The worst part? They only showed interest in Ethan when they could use him. Wouldn't Ethan love to help his uncle with his new business? Ethan could learn so much from Marcus. Every interaction had an agenda, and it always led back to their golden child. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Grace, we need to talk about family responsibility." My mother's voice through the phone had that tone, the one that meant they wanted something. It was a Tuesday evening. I'd just finished a brutal shift, still in my scrubs, helping Ethan with his homework. "What is it now, Mom?" "Marcus has an incredible opportunity. A franchise opportunity. This one's different, Grace. This is his chance to finally make something of himself." I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was heading. "How much?" $30,000. And before you say anything, we've already put in 20,000 ourselves. We need you to cover the rest. My stomach dropped. $30,000. That was Ethan's college fund. Every extra shift, every overtime hour, every sacrifice I'd made for 5 years sat in that account. I can't do that, Mom. That's Ethan's education money. Education? Dad's voice joined the call. Marcus is trying to build something real here. Something that could benefit the whole family. You're being selfish. Selfish? I kept my voice steady, watching Ethan work on his math problems. I'm a single mother saving for my son's future. Family helps family, Mom said, her voice sharp now. Or have you forgotten that too, along with your marriage vows? The cruelty of it took my breath away. My divorce has nothing to do with this. Everything you do reflects on this family, Dad said. Marcus has stayed loyal. He's trying to build something. You just take and take. I've never taken anything from you since I was 18. And that's the problem, Mom snapped. You think you're better than us, better than Marcus. Well, you need to learn your place in this family. The threat in her voice was clear. I just didn't know how far they'd go. The calls didn't stop. Every day for a week they found new angles to work. Ethan would want his uncle to succeed, Mom texted. What kind of example are you setting? You're destroying this family, Dad left in a voicemail. Marcus is devastated. He's your only brother. They started using Ethan as leverage. When Ethan asks why his uncle's business failed, you'll have to explain how you chose money over family, Mom said during another call. Marcus himself finally called, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion. Grace, I've never asked you for anything. This is my last chance. I'm almost 40. Don't you want me to succeed? I want you to get a job, Marcus. A real job. This is real. God, you're just like everyone else. You don't believe in me either. The guilt trips were relentless, but I held firm. That money wasn't mine to give. It was Ethan's future, saved dollar by dollar through years of sacrifice. Every time I wanted to give in just to stop the emotional assault, I looked at my son and remembered why I was standing strong. Then Mom played her final card. You know, Grace, we're not getting any younger. We won't be around forever. Do you really want to spend our last years like this? Torn apart because you won't help your brother? I'm not the one tearing anything apart, I said quietly. You are, by asking me to sacrifice my son's future for Marcus's fantasies. Fine, she said, her voice cold as winter. You've made your choice, but choices have consequences. You need to be taught a lesson about what happens when you turn your back on this family. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. The line went dead. Saturday came with a 12-hour shift I couldn't refuse. The ER was short-staffed, and weekend shifts paid time and a half, money I always added to Ethan's college fund. Mom, do I have to go to Grandma's? Ethan asked that morning, pushing his cereal around the bowl. What's wrong, sweetheart? They've been weird lately. Grandma keeps asking if I love Uncle Marcus. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice light. It's just for today. I'll pick you up as soon as my shift ends. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We'd be happy to watch Ethan today. Give you a break. They'd never offered before. Not once in 5 years of single motherhood had they volunteered to babysit. Every instinct screamed that something was off, but I needed this shift. The hospital was already counting on me. Actually, I told Ethan, Grandma just offered to pick you up. That saves us time. His face fell slightly, but he nodded. Okay, I should have listened to that look. Should have trusted the twist in my stomach when Mom arrived, all smiles and false warmth. We'll have such a fun day, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Won't we, Ethan? Dad waited in the car, not bothering to come in. That should have been another red flag. He always came in to critique something about my housekeeping. I'll pick him up by 8, I said, kissing Ethan's forehead. Take your time, Mom said. We have plans. Something felt off, but I needed the shift. The money mattered. I trusted that whatever issues I had with my parents, they'd never hurt Ethan. He was their grandson. I was wrong. The first missed call came at 2 p.m., Ethan's number lighting up my phone screen while I was elbow deep in a trauma case. I couldn't answer. A car accident victim needed immediate attention. The second call came 20 minutes later, then a third. Between patients, I grabbed my phone. 3 missed calls from Ethan, but no voicemail. I texted quickly. "Everything okay, baby?" No response. I called Mom. Straight to voicemail. Dad's phone rang, but he didn't answer. "Grace, we need you in trauma too," my colleague called. Another text to Mom. "Is everything all right? Ethan called 3 times." Her response came an hour later. "Busy, he's fine." But something cold settled in my stomach. Ethan never called multiple times unless something was wrong. During my break, I tried calling him back. His phone was now off. "Mom, why is Ethan's phone off?" I texted. "Battery died. Stop worrying." At 4 p.m., I noticed a missed call from an unknown number. No voicemail. I was about to call back when another emergency rolled in. The afternoon became a blur of critical patients, but that cold feeling grew worse. By 6 p.m., I'd tried calling my parents 8 times. Mom finally texted, "Stop bothering us. We're handling things." Handling things? What things? My hands were shaking as I texted back, "What does that mean? Where's Ethan?" No response. At 6:47 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. The same one from earlier. This time, I was ready. I stepped into a supply closet and answered. "Hello? Is this Grace Mitchell?" A man's voice, calm but concerned. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Father Thomas from St. Mary's Church. Ma'am, your son has been here for 3 hours. Alone." The world tilted. "What do you mean alone?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Your parents dropped him off around 3:30. They said you'd be picking him up, but—" Father Thomas paused. "Ma'am, they left him at the entrance with a note. He's been crying for hours." My legs nearly gave out. "A note?" "It says, 'When you learn your place, you can have him back.'" The supply closet spun around me. They'd abandoned my baby, my 8-year-old son, like he was nothing. "Is he okay? Is he hurt?" "He's scared and confused, but physically fine. I've been sitting with him. He keeps asking why his grandparents left him." "I'm coming right now, 20 minutes. "Mrs. Mitchell, there's something else. We have security cameras, everything was recorded." I barely registered his words, already running toward the exit, ripping off my scrubs jacket. My supervisor saw my face and didn't even question when I said family emergency. The drive was a blur. Every red light felt eternal. I called my parents, both phones now completely off. They'd planned this, calculated it. When I pulled up to St. Mary's, I saw him through the glass doors, my little boy sitting on a bench, his Spider-Man backpack beside him, Father Thomas's hand on his shoulder. The moment Ethan saw me, he ran. "Mommy!" He crashed into my arms, sobbing. "They left me. Grandma said you'd come when you learned to behave. What did you do wrong?" My heart shattered. They'd made him think this was my fault. "Nothing, baby. Nothing at all." I held him tighter, my own tears falling. "This isn't your fault or mine." Father Thomas approached quietly, the note in his hand. My mother's handwriting. "Learn your place." If you're a parent watching this, I need you to understand something. What happened next changed not just our lives, but how an entire community views child abandonment. Before I continue, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family pressure and protecting your child? Your stories give me strength. Because what Father Thomas showed me next would become the key to everything that happened in that courtroom 3 months later. Let me take you back to that moment. Father Thomas led us to his office while Ethan clung to my hand. The church felt different from my childhood memories. Warmer somehow. Safer. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to show you something, Father Thomas said gently. His computer screen was already open. Our security system captured everything. The timestamp read 3:27 p.m. There were my parents' car pulling up to the church entrance. Mom got out first, then pulled Ethan from the back seat. Even without audio, I could see him resisting, confused. Dad stayed in the driver's seat, engine running. Grandma, where are we going? I could read Ethan's lips. Mom bent down, said something, then placed an envelope in his hand. She pointed to the church doors, then walked back to the car. The camera caught Ethan's face, confusion turning to panic as he realized they were leaving. Grandma, please! He ran after the car, but they drove away. My baby stood there for 5 minutes, looking down the street, before he finally walked to the church doors and knocked. We keep 30 days of footage, Father Thomas said quietly. I've already saved this file separately. Why? I managed to ask. Why save it? He looked at me with knowing eyes. I've been a priest for 30 years, Mrs. Mitchell. I've seen enough to recognize when something might be needed later. This is abandonment. Ethan pressed closer to me. Father Thomas gave me cookies, he whispered, and let me play games on his phone. Thank you, I told the priest, meaning it with every fiber of my being. There's a USB drive with the footage, he said, sliding it across the desk. Just in case. I didn't know then how crucial those words would become. For 3 days, Ethan didn't speak unless spoken to. He'd always been chatty, telling me about school, his friends, his drawings. Now, silence. Sweetheart, you can talk to me, I said Sunday morning, sitting on his bed. What if they come back? His voice was so small. What if they take me again? They won't, I promise. But promises weren't enough. Monday morning, I called Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist who worked with the hospital. Bring him in, she said after I explained. Today. In her office, with its soft colors and toy-filled shelves, Ethan finally opened up. Not to me, I waited outside, but to Dr. Chen. When she called me in an hour later, her face was serious. Mrs. Mitchell, Ethan is showing clear signs of abandonment trauma. He's experiencing anxiety that his grandparents will take him again, that you might leave him somewhere too. My throat closed. I would never. He knows that logically, but trauma doesn't follow logic. She pulled out a form. I'm documenting everything. His symptoms, what he's told me, the circumstances. This is medical record, official documentation. Is that necessary? She looked at me directly. Your parents deliberately abandoned a minor child as psychological manipulation. That's not just cruel, Mrs. Mitchell. It's criminal. You need documentation. That word, criminal, shifted something in me. This wasn't just family drama anymore. Keep everything, Dr. Chen continued. Text messages, voicemails, that security footage Father Thomas gave you. Document every interaction. They're still my parents. And Ethan is your son. Who are you protecting here? She was right. That night, I started a file. Every nasty text about the money, every voicemail, the note they'd left with my son. This wasn't the first time they'd used Ethan as leverage, I realized. Just the first time they'd gone this far. 1 week later, my phone buzzed with a group text from my cousin Lisa. Don't forget, Marcus's birthday party, Saturday soon p.m. They were throwing him a party. After what they'd done to Ethan, they were celebrating their golden child. The audacity burned through me like fire. Saturday arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully, professional but not trying too hard. Ethan was safe with my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd been horrified when I told her what happened. I walked into my parents' house without knocking. The living room was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. Marcus held court in the center, laughing about something. And Grace just abandoned her responsibilities to the family, Mom was saying to Aunt Patricia, after everything we've done for her. The room noticed me one by one, conversations dying like dominoes falling. Mom's face went white, then red. There she is, she recovered quickly, voice dripping false sweetness. The mother who abandoned her duties. The room was silent, watching. This was it. The public moment they'd created. Abandoned? I kept my voice steady, calm. Like you abandoned Ethan at St. Mary's Church last Saturday? Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle Robert's coffee cup stopped midway to his lips. We were teaching you a lesson, Dad said, standing. About family loyalty. You left an 8-year-old child alone at a church for 3 hours, with a note saying I could have him back when I learned my place. You're being dramatic, Mom said, but her voice wavered. Father Thomas has the security footage, every second of you driving away while Ethan ran after your car, crying. The room's energy shifted. Aunt Patricia stepped away from Mom. Cousins exchanged looks. You did what? Lisa whispered. I pulled out my phone, my hands perfectly steady. Would you like to see the footage? Father Thomas was very thorough. You're making this up, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he looked unsure. Am I? I turned the phone toward the room. There it was. The timestamp, the church entrance, my parents' car. I didn't play it, just showed the frozen frame. Or would you prefer to hear the voicemail where Mom threatened to teach me a lesson? Mom reached for my phone, but I pulled it back. Don't touch me. Grace, this is a family matter, Dad said, his judge of the family voice. No, it became a criminal matter when you abandoned a minor child. I looked around the room, meeting every eye. They wanted $30,000, Ethan's college fund. When I said no, they used my son as a weapon. That money was for me? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. For once, he looked uncomfortable. Your parents have given you over $100,000 in 3 years, I said directly to him. But that wasn't enough. You needed my son's future, too. The room was electric with tension. Aunt Patricia set down her plate with a sharp click. Dr. Chen documented everything, I continued. The trauma, the anxiety, the fact that Ethan won't sleep alone anymore. He's 8 years old, and he's afraid his grandparents will take him again. We're his grandparents! Mom's composure finally cracked. We have rights. Actually, you don't. I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for 3 days. This is a restraining order. Emergency protective order, actually. You come near Ethan again, you'll be arrested. Dad's face went purple. You can't. I can. I did. And there's more coming. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus's birthday cake sat untouched, candles unlit, like a monument to their crumbling facade. More? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. The district attorney is reviewing the case. Child abandonment is a felony in this state. I let that sink in. Father Thomas already gave his statement. So did Dr. Chen. You went to the police? Uncle Robert finally spoke, his voice shocked. About your parents? They went to a church and abandoned my child, I replied. What would you have done? Nobody answered. Several family friends were already gathering their things, uncomfortable. The custody hearing is in 3 months, I announced to the room. Emergency hearing for permanent removal of grandparent visitation rights. Judge Harrison's court. It's public record. Anyone can attend. Mom sank into a chair. Dad's hands were shaking now, his authority evaporating. You're destroying this family, he said. No, you destroyed it when you treated my son like a bargaining chip. When you decided your golden child mattered more than your grandson's safety. I turned to Marcus. Happy birthday. I hope it was worth it. Lisa stepped forward. Grace, we didn't know. Now you do. I headed for the door, then stopped. Oh, and Mom? That lesson you wanted to teach me? Consider it learned. I learned that protecting my son from you is my only priority. Please, Mom called out. We can work this out privately. You gave up privacy when you abandoned him in public. I looked back one final time. See you in court. The last thing I heard as I left was Aunt Patricia's voice. Linda, Robert, how could you? Their kingdom was already crumbling. 3 months later, I sat in Judge Thomas Harrison's courtroom, my hands folded calmly in my lap. The gallery was packed. Family members, church congregants, even some of my colleagues from the hospital. Word had spread. Judge Harrison was known for two things: his intolerance for child endangerment and his ability to see through manipulation. At 58, he'd seen everything family court could offer. Today, his expression was particularly stern. My parents sat at the respondents' table with their expensive lawyer, Mr. Brennan, who'd probably cost them another $10,000 they could have given Marcus. Mom wore her best church dress, trying to look like the devoted grandmother. Dad sat rigid, his jaw clenched. Behind them, I noticed Father Thomas in his collar, Dr. Chen with her files, and surprisingly, several neighbors who'd witnessed my parents' behavior over the years. Mrs. Rodriguez caught my eye and nodded supportively. The court clerk read the case number. Emergency hearing regarding petition for termination of grandparent visitation rights and restraining order, Mitchell versus Smith. Judge Harrison reviewed his papers. I've read the initial filings, very serious allegations here: child abandonment, emotional abuse, endangerment of a minor. Mr. Brennan stood. Your Honor, this is a simple family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. My clients are loving grandparents who— Mr. Brennan, Judge Harrison interrupted. I'll hear from the petitioner first. My lawyer, Ms. Janet Torres, stood. She was younger than Brennan, but had a reputation for being fierce when it came to protecting children. Your Honor, we have video evidence, medical documentation, and multiple witnesses to systematic emotional abuse culminating in the deliberate abandonment of an 8-year-old child. The judge leaned forward. Video evidence? Yes, Your Honor, from St. Mary's Church security system. Father Thomas is here to authenticate it. Mom's lawyer whispered urgently to them. Their faces were already pale. Play the video, Judge Harrison ordered. The bailiff dimmed the lights slightly. On the courtroom monitor, the footage began. The timestamp clear. Saturday, 3:27 p.m. The entire gallery leaned forward. There was my mother, pulling Ethan from the car. His confused face filled the screen as she handed him the note. Then, the moment that made several people gasp: Ethan running after the car, his small figure growing smaller as my parents drove away. Stop, Judge Harrison said. His voice was ice. Rewind 10 seconds. We watched again. Ethan, running, crying, abandoned. Father Thomas, the judge addressed him directly. You found this child? Father Thomas stood. Yes, Your Honor. He knocked on our doors at 3:33 p.m. He was crying, confused, holding a note that said his mother could have him back when she learned her place. How long was he alone? 3 hours and 14 minutes, Your Honor. His mother arrived at 6:47 p.m. The judge turned to my parents. This was your idea of teaching a lesson? Mr. Brennan started to speak, but Judge Harrison raised his hand. I want to hear from them. Mom stood shakily. We just wanted Grace to understand family loyalty. By abandoning her child? The judge's voice rose slightly. A minor child who had no understanding of your adult conflict? We were always going to go back, Dad interjected. When? Judge Harrison demanded. After how many hours? What if something had happened? What if he'd wandered off? What if the wrong person had found him? Silence. Ms. Torres stood. Your Honor, we also have audio recordings of threats made prior to this incident. Play them. Mom's voice filled the courtroom. You need to be taught a lesson about what happens when you turn your back on this family. Several people in the gallery shook their heads in disgust. Dr. Chen, please take the stand, Ms. Torres said. Dr. Chen walked forward with her files, sworn in, her credentials established quickly. Her testimony was devastating in its clinical precision. Ethan Mitchell presents with acute adjustment disorder with anxiety, she began. He experiences nightmares about being abandoned. He refuses to let his mother out of sight. He asks repeatedly if he did something wrong to make his grandparents leave him. In your professional opinion, Ms. Torres asked, what was the impact of this abandonment? Severe psychological trauma. Children at 8 years old are developing their understanding of trust and safety. To be abandoned by grandparents, people who should be secondary caregivers, creates fundamental insecurity. Has he said anything specific about that day? Dr. Chen consulted her notes. He told me, quote, Grandma said Mommy was bad and needed to learn. I asked if I was bad too, and she didn't answer. She just left. Muffled sobs came from the gallery. Even the court reporter looked affected. Mr. Brennan stood for cross-examination. Isn't it possible this is temporary upset that will resolve? Mr. Brennan, Dr. Chen's voice was steel. This child now requires therapy twice a week. He's on a waiting list for anxiety medication evaluation. This isn't upset. This is trauma inflicted by adults who prioritized money over a child's well-being. Judge Harrison raised his hand. I've heard enough for the moment. We'll take a 15-minute recess while I review the additional documentation. As he stood, he looked directly at my parents. I suggest you use this time to consider very carefully what you've done. The gallery erupted in whispers as he left. Mom was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. They'd made Ethan cry for 3 hours. What happens next in that courtroom changed everything. But before I share the judge's words that left my parents sobbing, I want to thank everyone who stayed with this story. If you've ever had to stand up to family members who crossed the line, please share your experience below. Hit the like button if you believe children should always come first, no matter what family politics are involved. Your support helps other parents know they're not alone in protecting their children from toxic family members. Now let me tell you exactly what Judge Harrison said when he returned. Judge Harrison returned with a face carved from stone. The courtroom fell silent instantly. I've reviewed everything, he began. The video evidence, the medical documentation, the pattern of emotional manipulation documented through text messages and voicemails. He looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, please stand. They rose shakily, Mr. Brennan beside them. In 23 years on this bench, I've seen many forms of child abuse. What you've done is particularly insidious because you weaponized a child's love for his grandparents. Mom started to speak, but the judge's look silenced her. Effective immediately, all grandparent visitation rights are terminated. Permanently. No supervised visits, no phone calls, no contact of any kind with the minor child Ethan Mitchell. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan started. I'm not finished. A restraining order is granted. 500 feet minimum distance from Ethan Mitchell, his home, his school, and any location where he might reasonably be present. Dad's legs seemed to buckle slightly. Mom gripped the table. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, this court is referring this case to the district attorney's office for review of criminal charges, child abandonment, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit psychological abuse of a minor. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Criminal charges. This was beyond what even I had expected. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan's voice was desperate now. My clients are elderly. They're pillars of their community. Your clients, Judge Harrison's voice rose, abandoned an 8-year-old child at a church to manipulate his mother into giving them money for their adult son. They used a child as a bargaining chip. That's not being a pillar of anything except cruelty. The judge wasn't done. He was just getting started. Judge Harrison looked directly at my parents, his eyes unflinching. Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, I want you to understand something clearly. You didn't just abandon a child. You weaponized a child's love. You made an 8-year-old boy believe his mother's refusal to fund your adult son's business venture was more important than his safety and emotional well-being. Mom was sobbing now. Dad's face had gone from red to ash gray. This is not discipline. This is cruelty, the judge continued. You talk about family loyalty? Where was your loyalty to your grandson when you left him crying at a church? Where was your loyalty to your daughter, who has raised that child alone while working as a nurse? He shuffled his papers. I see here that you've given your son Marcus over $100,000 in 3 years. Yet you punished your daughter for protecting her child's college fund. This is not about family. This is about control and favoritism taken to an abusive extreme. We love our grandson, Mom choked out. No, Judge Harrison said firmly. You love control. You love your narrative of the perfect family where everyone bows to your wishes. Love doesn't abandon children. Love doesn't traumatize 8-year-olds to make a point. He picked up his gavel. In addition to the criminal referral, this court orders mandatory completion of 60 hours of parenting classes and 100 hours of community service at a children's shelter. Perhaps there you will learn what child abandonment really means. But we're his grandparents, Dad finally exploded. Not anymore, Judge Harrison said simply. You forfeited that privilege the moment you drove away from that church. The gavel came down with finality. Court is adjourned. The sound of that gavel echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Mom collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Dad stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing without sound, like he'd forgotten how to speak. This isn't over, he finally managed to tell Mr. Brennan. We'll appeal. We have rights. Mr. Brennan was already packing his briefcase. Mr. Smith, you need to focus on the criminal charges now. An appeal. He shook his head. No judge will overturn this. Not with that video. Around us, the gallery was stirring. I heard whispers of shock, sympathy, but not for my parents, for Ethan, for me. Grace! Mom suddenly called out, mascara streaming down her face. Grace, please! We're sorry, we just wanted… You wanted $30,000, I said quietly, standing. And you were willing to traumatize my son to get it. But we're his grandparents. She kept repeating it, like it was a magic phrase that could undo everything. Ms. Torres put her hand on my shoulder. We should go. As we walked toward the door, I noticed who wasn't there. Marcus, their golden child, the one they'd sacrificed everything for, hadn't even shown up to support them. Father Thomas caught my eye as we passed. You did the right thing, he said quietly. That boy is blessed to have you. Behind us, Mom's sobs grew louder. We didn't mean for it to go this far. But they did. They meant to break me. They meant to use my son as a weapon. They just never imagined the weapon would turn on them. The courtroom doors closed on their cries. For the first time in 3 months, I could breathe. The community response was swift and decisive. By the next Sunday, Father Thomas had told the congregation what he'd witnessed. Not gossip, but facts. My parents' empty pew spoke volumes. Grace, I had no idea. Mrs. Patterson, who'd known my family for 20 years, stopped me after service. Your mother always made it sound like you were the difficult one, but to do that to little Ethan? The church rallied around us. Suddenly, Ethan had dozens of adopted grandparents offering to babysit, bringing casseroles, checking in. The support was overwhelming in the best way. At the hospital, my colleagues were equally supportive. My supervisor, who'd seen me leave in panic that Saturday, pulled me aside. If you need any documentation about that shift, about how they timed this when you couldn't refuse work, I'll provide it for the criminal case. Even our neighbors stepped forward. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a rotation of after-school care. That boy will never be left alone again, she declared firmly. The most surprising support came from other families who'd been silent victims of my parents' judgment over the years. 3 different cousins reached out, sharing their own stories of manipulation and favoritism. Then, Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Can we talk? Mom and Dad need help with legal fees. I stared at the message in disbelief. After everything, he was still asking for money. Not how's Ethan? Not I'm sorry. Just another request for cash. I typed back. The community is supporting your nephew's recovery from what your parents did. Perhaps you should ask why you weren't in that courtroom supporting them. He replied immediately, "This is all your fault. If you'd just given the money." I blocked his number. The professional consequences for my parents came fast. Dad had been on the church board for 15 years. The following Tuesday, Father Thomas informed me he'd been asked to step down. "We cannot have someone who abandons children in a position of spiritual leadership," the board president had told him. Mom's situation was worse. She'd been secretary of the local children's charity for a decade, organizing fundraisers, coordinating volunteers. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Within a week of the court hearing, she received a formal letter requesting her resignation. How can someone who traumatized their own grandchild claim to care about children's welfare? The charity president had asked. Their social standing, built over 30 years, crumbled in weeks. The country club membership was quietly not renewed. The dinner party invitations stopped. Even their longtime friends distanced themselves. Linda called me crying, Aunt Patricia told me. Said everyone was being cruel. I asked her, "What did you expect? You abandoned an 8-year-old to punish his mother." She hung up on me. The criminal investigation added another layer. Detective Morrison interviewed me, Father Thomas, Dr. Chen, and even some neighbors. "We're taking this seriously," she assured me. "What they did constitutes felony child endangerment." My parents had to hire a criminal defense attorney, another expense they couldn't afford. I heard through family that they'd taken out a second mortgage on their house. The ultimate irony? Marcus, still living in their basement, still unemployed, still the golden child, complained to cousins that his parents' legal troubles were stressing him out and affecting his business planning. "Maybe," cousin Lisa told him flatly, "if you got a job instead of living off your parents, none of this would have happened." The kingdom they'd built on favoritism and control was nothing but ruins now. 2 weeks after the hearing, Marcus showed up at my work. Security called me down to the lobby. He looked different, older, tired, maybe even defeated. "5 minutes," I said, staying near security. "Grace, he started, then stopped. "Mom and Dad are falling apart. Dad just sits in his chair. Mom cries all day." And? And I didn't know they were going to leave Ethan at the church. They told me they were just going to pressure you a little. I studied my brother, 38 years old, still dressed like a college student, still unable to take responsibility. But you knew they were pressuring me for your money. It wasn't supposed to go this far. It never is with you, is it? Nothing's ever supposed to go wrong. Your businesses aren't supposed to fail. Mom and Dad aren't supposed to run out of money. I'm not supposed to say no." He shifted uncomfortably. "I see now why you left at 18, why you stayed away. They're not normal, are they?" It was the closest to awareness I'd ever heard from him. "No, Marcus, they're not." "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for my part in this, for letting them." He trailed off. For a moment, I saw the brother he could have been without their toxic influence. Then he ruined it. "But Grace, they really do need help with the legal fees. Maybe just 10,000? I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're apologizing while asking for money? You really are their son." "But—" "Goodbye, Marcus." As security escorted him out, I realized something. He was almost 40. No job, no savings, no life outside our parents' basement. Their golden child had become their prison warden, and they'd built the cage themselves. 6 months later, the change in Ethan was remarkable. Dr. Chen called it resilient recovery, but I called it my son coming back to me. "Mom, look." He ran into the kitchen one afternoon, holding his report card, all A's and B's, plus a note from his teacher. "Ethan's confidence has grown tremendously this semester." The nightmares had stopped after month 4. The clinging behavior faded gradually. He still had moments. Sudden anxiety if I was late, occasional questions about why Grandma and Grandpa had been mean, but he was healing. "Dr. Chen says I'm brave," he told me one evening, coloring at the kitchen table. She says not all kids could handle what I handled. You are brave, baby, the bravest. Mom, he looked up. I'm glad they can't come near us anymore. Is that bad? No, sweetheart, it's not bad to feel safe. The community support had become our new family. Mrs. Rodriguez taught him Spanish. Father Thomas invited us to church events where Ethan felt special, not abandoned. My colleagues' kids became his friends. His college fund remained untouched, actually growing with the interest and my continued contributions. Every deposit felt like a victory, a promise that his future mattered more than anyone's demands. I want to be a doctor, Ethan announced one day, like Dr. Chen, to help kids who are scared. My eyes filled with tears. You'd be an amazing doctor. And Mom, when I grow up, if I have kids, I'll never leave them alone. Ever. That night, I watched him sleep peacefully. No more checking the locks, no more fear. We'd survived. More than that, we'd thrived. The price of freedom from toxic family had been high, but looking at my son's peaceful face, I knew it was worth every legal document, every court appearance, every difficult boundary I'd had to set. The restraining order held firm. No violations, no attempts at contact. I heard through extended family that my parents had aged years in months. Their criminal case resulted in probation and community service. No jail time, but a permanent record. I got promoted to nursing supervisor, the position coming with better hours and pay that meant even more security for Ethan's future. My colleagues respected me more, knowing I'd stood up for my son against enormous pressure. You teach all of us what boundaries really mean, my colleague Sarah said. Family isn't a free pass to abuse. I taught Ethan the same lesson. People who love you don't hurt you to get what they want, I explained simply. Not friends, not family, not anyone. 1 year after the abandonment, I received a letter through my lawyer. My parents asking for forgiveness, wanting to make things right. I read it once, then filed it away. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It was Ethan's, and he was too young to make that choice. Maybe someday, when he was older, if he wanted to know them. But that would be his decision, not mine, and certainly not theirs. Marcus still lived in their basement, still unemployed, still the golden child in a tarnished crown. The family I'd lost had never really been mine anyway. The family I'd built, Ethan and our chosen community, was real. Mom, Ethan said one evening, I'm happy it's just us. Me too, baby. And I meant it. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to traumatize a child. Love isn't measured in obedience or money or maintaining toxic loyalty. Love is protecting your child, even from the people who raised you, especially from them when necessary. If you've made it this far, you understand why I had to share this story. Too many people stay silent when family crosses the line, especially when children are involved. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to know it's okay to protect their children from toxic family members. Remember, setting boundaries isn't cruel. Allowing abuse is. Thank you for listening to our story. Your support helps other parents know they're not alone.